Good morning, I'm in Hasidic Williamsburg, where the shops are filled with specialty items. In the toy stores, you'll have little figurines and kosher technology. And today, I'm so excited to give you a tour of Lee Avenue Photo, a specialized shop, one of my favorite places here in the community. So there's a whole industry of specialized Hasidic toys that are often going to have little menchies, which are little figurines that reflect the emphasis on family values. They'll often have characters that are in their traditional roles in the family, and you can see that based on their clothing, which is often signified by special stages in life. For instance, a boy at 13 starts to wear a hat, or a man at marriage starts to wear the round fur hat called the shtreimel. So we'll have sets like this one, which is literally a set of Hasidic hats and characters and menchies that all reflect what the children here enjoy to role play. This is one of the newer sets that is a Rebbe's Tish. The rabbi of the Hasidic sect will lead what's called a tish, which is Yiddish for a table. He will lead a ceremony with his followers, and this is the tish that has the benches, the steps that the followers will stand on in order to see the Rebbe. And sometimes when I talk about these things on my tours, people will say, oh, this is brainwashing. It's very easy to use very harsh language in other cultures, entertainments, but I think inherent in anything children play with are the values that are central to the culture and to the children. For instance, if we look at the Barbie culture, which to me was very surprising.
What's happening? Happening girls, happening look, happening hair, Barbie.
That, of course, is something the children are not just playing with. That is also its own unique set of values about beauty norms, about aspirations. I think children's toys really reflect both what a society values, what children enjoy imagining, and also what's else. And here we have, I think, aspirations towards a life of family, a very traditional conservative life of marriage. These figurines reflect marriage. This reflects the life cycle of the bar mitzvah, the family, and so on. So these are costumes that children will dress up as adults. They will dress up as married folks, and they're able to emulate married folks through a costume because there is a special dress that you wear upon marriage for both men and women. This is a little bitty infant book that has all sorts of Jewish themes. This has a mezuzah, this is a shofar. All of these are different themes of Judaism. And you know, from early childhood, there are opportunities for children to play with not just regular toys, but also with toys that reflect the very religious world in which they grow up in and the many values that they are surrounded with. I have a collection of Hasidic games that are based off of something else that you might know. This, if you can guess, is Stratego, which is a classic board game. The Hasidic adaptation is not a straight up adaptation. It is a version that is Hatzalah, which is their emergency response, and it's about who can get to the scene first. We don't see any battles, we don't see any wars in any of these games here, and so something like helping by arriving to the scene first becomes a more appropriate interpretation of this strategy game. This is a Monopoly card game. Monopoly is a very interesting example of how games are translated here, because for years it was translated as Handel Ehrlich, which means deal honestly, and it was not a game about money. It was a very controversial game because it was seen as too extreme. It actually had hell on the board. I know a lot of people think that in Judaism there is no hell, but the concept of hell does exist here. And so the game was seen as too punitive, and it is now out of print. It's really hard to find. If anyone has it, please send it to me or sell it to me. But this is now the updated version, which is a more kind of with it version. It is Deal Spiel, and it is a kind of a capitalistic game instead of being a game about values like Handel Ehrlich was. There is also a lot of collecting cards, like baseball card equivalent, holy places, synagogues, Yiddish history. One of them that I have been collecting that is a little controversial is the anti-smartphone card industry. There are hundreds of them with cartoons. about the problems of how addictive the internet is, and oftentimes they're right. One the Kurt says is called Akasha Famasa, which is a great Yiddish expression. Akasha Famasa means you're asking a question about a story. It is kind of like, why are you asking questions about a story? There's an assumption that stories maybe have to have a little story flair. And if you start to ask, but how could it be? This story doesn't make sense. Akasha Famasa, don't ask questions on a story. It's a great Yiddish refrain. Akasha Famasa. In this very insular world, there is not a screen culture in the home. The center of the home is a dining room with a table where you eat. It's not a living room with a screen. And so even if, in theory, you can make kosher movies, because there's not really that kind of screen centrality, that would be a big problem. And so ingenious entrepreneurs have come up with a solution, which is a whole industry of this, which are like little slideshows, I believe, that tell a story. It kind of allows for a movie experience, even if you don't have a screen in the center of your home. When I grew up in the Hasidic community, music was not much of a thing. In the phone book, there was one kind of music listing, a one-man band. One-man band. That was one word. And there would be just one person at a piano playing at weddings, or if you were well off, you might even have them at a bar mitzvah. And the people who could afford it would also have a singer at a wedding, but it would just be a person at a piano and a singer. Since then, the whole music industry has exploded. I've covered some of it on my YouTube channel. Now it is just growing, and you can see it in the kinds of musical options that are sold in this shop. There's all sorts of mics and instruments, children's versions of instruments, even children role-playing being a singer. Wow. You know what this reminds me of, a mic? Lunchroom as a kid. The woman, while we were eating breakfast and lunch, would be on the mic reciting blessings, and the good girls would get to speak it into the mic. This is the good stuff. If you're wondering where you can still get actual home phones, the answer is here. Look at this. Good old school phone with a curly wire. If you're one of those people that hates that everything's gone to text, come here. People still talk on the phone. In Yiddish, there is an expression, just as the secular world is changing, so the Hasidic world is changing. It's never in stasis. And one of that changes has been the addition of this whole engraving shop here, where you can get various items like this children's play talus with a name engraved. That's actually my son's name. Once a boy turns 3, he will always be wearing a yarmulke, even to sleep, and this is the sleeping version called the schlafkappel. You want to wear something like pajama fabric, something cozy, something that's not going to stain the pillow. At 3, a boy starts to wear the tzitzis with the fringes. This is a very little boy's. Gets bigger with time, but this will also possibly have an engraving. So all sorts of different items, might be religious, might not be, might be engraved to kind of make it personal. There's a selection of power banks that are also engraved as part of this engraving business. This is my favorite. Hashem's in charge. Fine. I've actually never looked at this before. It sounds very interesting. This is a mentila. The cover of a Torah is called a mentila. Every synagogue's gonna have, multiple. Oh wow. It says Shema b'ni misravichu v'al titash Torah simechu. Listen, my child, to the teachings of your father, and don't move from the teachings of your mother, which, by the way, speaks to how central sticking to the path of the parent is. In other words, how important tradition is. So on Shabbos, you're not allowed to turn on a light. It's part of the prohibition on Shabbos to work, and turning on a light is in some ways related to the concept of starting a fire, because you're starting electricity, so you're not allowed to turn on a light, turn off a light. This actually has a switch that allows you to pull a coverlet over this lamp that is going to snuff out the light that's coming out of it without the light actually being turned off. This is the original that I used to own, and then there are all of these like fancier upgraded versions or variations on them. There is a lot of women's entertainment. Women are not allowed to sing for a male audience, but they're allowed to sing and perform for a female audience. So this is a section of presentations by female actors, singers, production teams who make all sorts of entertainment for women. This production is intended for women and girls only. But there is a whole world like this that I would love to cover in my content, bring to the fore this world of female talent. This is largely the community's production for consumption for everyone, performed by men, and the productions by men will often be in Yiddish, while the section performed by women, that is for women only, will often be in English. Men learn Yiddish and Hebrew before they learn English, and so they're much more comfortable in Yiddish, while women don't learn Hebrew or biblical Hebrew before they learn English, and so they're much more comfortable performing in English. These are all MP3 players. Listening to lectures, listening to music, listening to storytelling is totally okay, but the idea of having all the world's entertainment accessible on your MP3 player is not considered okay, and so there's going to be variations of MP3 players that don't have internet access. That's what makes them kosher. This is the kosher Good Boy, the Game Boy that's kosher, and it says it doesn't have violence, which I guess is part of the prerequisite to make it kosher. More Good Boy. Makes me think of the Lazy Boy. This is the kosher symbol. I remember when I saw the first kosher phone and I was floored. That was 10 years ago. Now it is so prevalent that it has been turned into a toy that has a kosher symbol, just like the real deal. And this one, you can press buttons and it'll say things in Hasidic Yiddish, which is to say, it'll say hello. I'm always in my element when I look at kosher technology. I'm very at awe at how the innovation works side by side with the traditionalism. This is a kosher camera. It has no playback. It has no Wi-Fi. So you're not going to be automatically uploading your photos to your Google Drive or Google Photos. It is going to often have to be developed from an SD card, which is why a place like Lee Avenue Photo is going to have a photo developing center. Look, he has side curls. He has tzitzis. This is, you can do a play. Hello. Another favorite of mine is Kugelach, which is a very old school, one of the earliest games ever. It's 5 stones. The version that is played here is called Kugelach, where you hold the 5, they're heavy dices, and you throw them up. There's a whole system to how you throw them up and catch them back. A lot of things we're seeing today is contemporary, modern innovations. This is original stuff. This goes back a long time. We're filming this now at the beginning of the summer, and they have rolled out these art sets, which are Stehen pattern sets. You can make these gorgeous designs just by cutting the color shiny paper and folding it in a special way. You'll end up with these sets, which go into the sukkah as decoration. I've done a video showing you how these are made. This is, of course, books. Books are a very, very big deal, the people of the books. And this is like a whole issue in its own, how many books are being published here, especially because a lot of people have restrictions on what they're going to read. They're not going to read maybe secular books. So the entertainment books is in Yiddish, whereas the studying the holy text book is in Hebrew and Aramaic. Now for our last thing, these are a new gameplay, which are 3D puzzles of various local institutions or important institutions. This is the Satmar Sachs Yeshiva. Now finally, this 3D creation is the Great Satmar Synagogue in Kiryas Joel, an icon of my childhood, and I think very apt little toy to go out with. And it's one of the many amazing specialized items in this store, which is like a whole adventureland of different items that are special for this community. And the reason they are able to sell these things, the reason the shop exists, is a lot of people don't shop online. A lot of people have very limited access to the internet, if at all, and so they come here for stuff like from their phones to their specialized children's toys. Well, thank you all for watching.